This is an M-rated game, so viewer discretion is advised. Process of elimination. I love the detective genre. These games can be really fun to figure out how the murders were done, and find the killers and bring them to justice. The Ace Attorney and Danganronpa series does this kind of gameplay to almost perfection. I have reviewed another of these types of games about a year ago called Rain Code, and I thought it was okay at best. Its gimmick was that you go down to a mystery labyrinth to solve murders, and I found it tedious and boring, while the rest of the game was actually okay. Now the gimmick in this title is that it has you looking for clues to the murder in a strategy type gameplay. It's a little complicated at first, but it got easier the more times you do it. I did like how it changed up the situations each time that it happened. Maybe someone's hunting you and you need to avoid them, or there's deadly traps you have to disarm. It made each one of them interesting. Here's the problem though. This is maybe, if I'm being generous, 10% of the game. The other 90% was a visual novel which is on rails. They will occasionally have you answer a question, but for the most part, you're just a passive participant. The story is about your character who has been abducted with 13 other people who are detectives and brought to an island to try and solve the mystery of a serial killer named the Quartering Duke. When you get to the island, you find out that 22 other people who were already on the island have been killed. After that, you find the body of one of the detectives, and you quickly work out that the Quartering Duke is among you, and you need to figure out who it is before more bodies drop. The setup is interesting. However, the whole looking for the Quartering Duke is quickly dropped into the final chapter, as the game just has you moving from location to location and solving a murder in each chapter. The problem is that while the first location is interesting, as it is a manor, it only gets worse from there. This is all about hidden tunnels and mazes, and it was so dull. It felt like every location just kept getting less interesting. Now you might think the murders that you investigate are better, or at least intriguing. Unfortunately, they are not. They are very unrealistic. There's one in chapter 3 which was so insane and ridiculous. There is no reality where that works. Also, chapter 1 and 2 have crazy setups as well, but you could argue that someone could ask a construction worker who built this manor to put this in. But the whole time they'd be saying to each other, "So Vinny, we're building this guy a murder house, right?" "Yeah, of course we are. Did you see those spikes? What else would they be used for? At least we're getting paid." There is no other reason than murder to install the things in chapter 2. There was one thing that really started to annoy me, and that was that I was convinced at one point the game was listening to me make fun of it, because I kept writing notes about these insane things. But then all of a sudden it would try to justify or explain the crazy thing. It didn't happen once, but at least 20 times, where I wrote down a nitpick and the game would go out of its way to call it out or explain it away. My notepad was filled with scratched down nitpicks. I've never seen a game so defensive from a cynical like me before. In the brief parts where you have to do actual gameplay, the strategy parts has you moving around with other people to investigate clues. Sometimes you need to examine an item to unlock a clue. Sometimes some of the characters were unavailable to control, as they would do their own thing. So you would need to look out after them too when traps show up, or they might end up dead and you have to restart the whole thing again. Each of the different people who are detectives have their own stats, so you would have to use them in the proper ways. They give you a certain number of turns to find all the clues or optional points of interest, or you will die. It wasn't hard as long as you don't forget that you can move anywhere on the map, and as long as you make the movement the action of your turn. It took me a couple deaths to figure that one out. After that, the game was simple. After you finish the strategy clue finding, you're going to talk about what the clues mean and say who the killer is. This part was pretty straightforward. They give you choices and you choose from these. If you're wrong, your hit points will go down. They can go up if you make the correct choices. As long as you're paying attention, the mysteries were easy enough to solve. You'll keep doing this until you get to the final chapter where you have to unmask the Quartering Duke. The ending was a little unsatisfying. Both me and the little Wiiviewer who was watching me play this both figured out who the Quartering Duke was about halfway through, and it was cool to see us both right. The game is fully voiced in Japanese, with English subtitles. I would have liked it if there was an English dub, but the littlest thought the budget was so small, and that's why they didn't do it. He also thought the reason the places you explore were so basic is because they spared every expense, and he's probably right. He liked how you could keep moving, and he thought the game was good. I feel like this wanted to be a Danganronpa type game with interesting murders and limited suspects, and in my opinion, if it was trying to do that, it failed. It didn't even get to Rain Code's level, and that's not a hard bar to get over. As a murder mystery, it's okay, but I do think they should have cut out a bunch of dialogue and have a tighter story with more of an emphasis on the strategy clue finding, as I think it would have been way better. Process of Elimination is more of a book than a game. Every time you got to control your characters to find clues, it got interesting. However, this barely happens over the 20 hours that you're going to be playing this. Now this is normally $39.99, and I would say wait for it to go on a deep sale. There were some smart ideas in here. It's just too bad there's just so much filler, and it forgets the reason why we're on this island. So if you want to experience an okay murder mystery visual novel, I would say wait for it to go on sale.